lecture, we're going to focus on the research of Crusader-period pottery and glass that was found in Israel. And actually, you have here two topics condensed into one presentation. I would also like to mention our French colleagues that both of us have a good context with for many years, and they are mainly from Aix-en-Provence and Lyon. Danielle Foy, Marie-Dominique Nena, Lucie Valory, Véronique François, Yona Waxman, and of course more colleagues. Yael studies glass vessels and the production of glass from all periods and is the head of the glass department in the Israel Antiquity Authority. And I study mainly Crusader and Islamic pottery. Following the establishment of the Israel Antiquity Authority in 1990, there was a growing number of salvage excavations and a small number of specialists. And this is why in a very early stage of our career, we each began to specialize in a field. And as it was said before, Israel is a very small country, although we have a lot of rescue excavations, we don't have really the large number of specialists like you have in France and like we just saw before in all the different regions. Now, the Crusader-period material cultural remains in Israel is a fairly new field of research. The traditional focus of archaeologists working in the Holy Land from the 19th century has been on the biblical remains. And although the architecture of these periods attracted attention of French scholars like Vaux, Rey, and Enlaut, only after World War I, the first Crusader castle in the east was excavated. The excavation of the Teutonic castle of Montfort was conducted by Bashfordine, curator of Arms and Armor Department of the Metropolitan Museum of Art, and the main goal of this excavation was to find a 13th century suit of armor. Of course, today there are renewed excavations now by Adrian Boaz, looking at the whole picture. A few years after the excavation in Montfort, C.N. Jones conducted, on behalf of the Department of Antiquities of Palestine, excavations at the Templar Castle of Atlit, which we also heard about. Both excavations yielded some ceramic and glass finds, as you can see here. They were only briefly published, and no systematic study of these finds was conducted at the time. The first systematic studies of Crusader-period pottery began in our region in the late 1970s and 1980s, with Miriam Avissar's comprehensive publication of pottery from the Hebrew University excavation at Tel Yokneam, Kaimun. When Dennis Pringle arrived to the British School of Archaeology, he imported the methodology of excavation and ceramic research of medieval sites in Italy, where he worked previously. In a series of articles, mainly published in the journal Levant, Pringle attempted to characterize the Crusader pottery for the first time, to distinguish local and imported types, to define the proveniences, and to understand the meaning of the wide-scale importation. And he did all of this in the larger historical and archaeological context of each site. Doing so, he planted seeds for further research here. Medieval period glass studies began in the 1940s with the study of glass from Corinth by Gladys Davidson Weinberg, published in 1952. And she also later excavated a Crusader glass furnace at a site called Sumelaria, north of Acre, in the late 1960s. In the 1980s, there were several articles published by David Whitehouse and others, and a very important catalog of an exhibition that you can see here on the top was written in 1988 by Irvin Baumgartner and Ingbroid Kruger. And this summarized the knowledge at this stage. However, the discussion of Crusader glass only started at the end of the millennium. The catalog, published in 2010, is still discussing the medieval glass in general without specific characterization of Crusader glass. Today, these fields are more developed, and we're moving fast forward to today and jumping on some other advances. So what are the types of materials that we study today? The ceramic and glass finds studied during the past 3 decades originate mainly from excavations conducted by the Israel Antiquity Authority. Most of them are rescue excavations, and some for the promotion of tourism, like the excavation in Acre. These sites were excavated mainly because of their location and not necessarily because of their significance for the study of Crusader archaeology or material remains. So you have to keep this in mind, that most of the material that we're working on comes from these excavations that we did not decide to go excavate there, but we got the materials to work on. Now, we are fortunate that some of them are important or key sites, like the case of Acre, which was the capital of the Second Latin Kingdom of Jerusalem and an important port that served as an international maritime trade hub. In the early 1990s, large-scale excavations were carried out in the Hospitaller compound and the Knights Hotel, and also an excavation in the Crusader Tower, in one of the Crusader Towers. In these excavations, a large variety of imported ceramic and glass vessels were also revealed. The excavations yielded almost 10,500 ceramic fragments and vessels that were comprehensively studied and published in a 2-volume book in 2012. The glass finds from these excavations are unique, and for the first time it was possible to encounter a full assemblage of Frankish glass vessels, ranging from plain to the most luxurious wares. Types. The first publication of the finds from the Crusader Tower was published in 1997 and set the foundations for the study of Crusader-period glass in Israel. The glass vessels found in the large-scale excavations were already comprehensively studied, and their publication is forthcoming. The finds from Acre set a solid foundation for the study of Crusader-period pottery and glass from other excavated sites, including sites in the rural hinterland of Acre, such as the Frankish manor house excavated at Horvat Utza, or in its Latin name, La Ayadia, or the village of Khirbet Bet Zaneta, which is known as a village of indigenous population by the name of Zwanite. Published and unpublished material from Caesarea, Tiberias, Jaffa, and Apollonia Arsur, the latter excavated by the Tel Aviv University, were also incorporated in our study. The Crusader-period ceramic assemblage includes unglazed plain kitchenware, cooking vessels, transport amphorae, and an outstanding wide variety of glazed tablewares imported from many regions in the Mediterranean, some of them not previously identified in Crusader-period contexts in the Latin East. The Crusader-period glass assemblage comprised chiefly of drinking vessels, bottles, carafes, beakers, and wine glasses, which are typical of medieval glass tableware, and relatively few other types, and window panes, plain or decorated. And you can see them here, the windows on the bottom of the slide. What you see here on the slide are only a few examples from hundreds of vessels and a few dozens of types. So, what are our main conclusions from the study of the ceramic and glass vessels? We have seen that during the days of the Latin Kingdom of Jerusalem, both ceramic wares and glass vessels were produced locally and also imported from distant workshops. The majority of the ceramics used by the Frankish population in the Latin Kingdom of Jerusalem were produced in workshops operating within the kingdom, in Acre and in Beirut, and from workshops in the Latin East, in Paphos in Cyprus and Antioch, in the Principality of Antioch to the north. Other wares were imported from the Byzantine Empire, from southern Italy, southern France, Catalonia, Tunis, and even China. Oh, I'm sorry. Most of the glass vessels were also locally produced at Acre and in workshops in the vicinity, similar to that unearthed at Khirbet Sumelaria and at Jerusalem. And here on the slide you can see a drawing and a reconstruction of this very unique find. It seems that only a small percentage was imported from the Western Mediterranean and from some workshops in the East. From the latter, it seems that some of the enameled and gilded vessels were imported from Damascus or Fustat. Some bear remains of Arabic inscriptions. However, a systematic fabric analysis was not conducted for the Crusader-period glass vessels. This is only an assumption based on patterns and fabrics that may change as research continues. So how do we determine actually the provenience? So it was determined not only by typology, but also by ongoing petrography and chemical analysis. Regarding the pottery, beginning in 1996, 1967, 1997, when Yona Waxman came for a postdoc in the Hebrew University here in Jerusalem, and started an analysis program on the then newly excavated pottery from Acre. We were able, through this program, to define the provenience of some of the excavated wares by the chemical and petrographical analysis, and grouped them according to production centers. This started a collaboration that is ongoing since, and a highlight of this is INR funded research, the Pomodoro project, which in its framework we also analyzed finds from other sites. And we defined very well the Beirut and the Akko workshop productions that you can see here on the slide. In the future, we plan to initiate a French-Israeli training program and to share our gained knowledge to younger archaeologists. And just to give you an idea of the results, just in a glimpse, on this map you can see the main production sites of all the ceramic wares that were imported to the Latin Kingdom of Jerusalem. Now, regarding provenience analysis of Crusader-period glass vessels, this is only in the very first stages. A study was done in the beginning of the millennium by the Metropolitan on vessels and windows from the excavation of Din at Montfort. Some windows that were found also in Acre were already analyzed and are now being studied, and a research project on Crusader glass compositions is in its first stages. So in the future, we'll be able to say much more about this. Now, regarding the dates, of course, our framework is the 12th and 13th century, the days of the Latin Kingdom of Jerusalem. But how do we see the differences between 12th century and 13th century assemblages? So after studying for many years carefully excavated ceramic assemblages, it was unable to define two main ceramic assemblages, the first dating from the 12th to the early 13th century, and the second to the 13th century. While most of the local wares produced in Acre and some in Beirut appear in both assemblages, and we cannot know if they are from the 12th or from the 13th, we see a clear development in the cooking pots. In the 12th century, they have very thin walls, and in the 13th, the walls become thicker and the forms of the vessels slightly change. The imported ware can be much more precisely dated, with only Aegean and Byzantine imports in the earlier assemblage, and imports coming from Cyprus, northern Syria, Italy, and the Western Mediterranean in the 13th century. Now, unlike the ceramic finds, at this stage, the research of glass it is more difficult to accurately date the glass vessels. Although it seems that some date exclusively to the 12th century, it is possible that others were in use both in the 12th and in the 13th century. One of the conclusions from the study of the pottery also pertains towards cultural differences of the consumers. And here you can see two contemporary illustrations, one of the Arsenal Bible, the Frankish drawing, and you can see the Crusader dining style. And on the other side, you see the Muslim dining style from the Maqamat el-Khariri, and you can clearly see that they are consuming their food from different types of vessels, and the glass vessels are depicted here very nicely. You can see that they're transparent. You can see the red wine through them. So the study and comparison of the different excavated ceramic assemblages using quantitative analysis has shown differences between urban and rural assemblages and urban sites inhabited by Franks or by local population, and these are Muslims or local Christians. In an article named Pottery and Identity in the Latin Kingdom of Jerusalem, a case study of Acre in the Western Galilee, I have compared the ceramic assemblages of Horvat Uza, Bet Zaneta, and Acre. Well, when I looked at the assemblages, it was evident at first glance that they all have the same pottery types. And here you can see, just for instance, the Cypriot Paphos ware from the 13th century. You can see we have in all sites exactly the same types decorated with slip painting decoration and sgraffito decoration. However, when the pottery finds were quantified and compared, it was clear that the makeup of each assemblage is different. For instance, the imported glazed wares, and you can take a look at number 2, were found in the highest quantities in the urban center, Acre, in blue. In the rural site, the Frankish village of Laha Yadia, there was a higher percentage of imports than in the village of the locals, which is the yellow. And we don't have enough time to look at this graph into detail, but it just shows you that quantifying the finds really can give us interesting insights. Well, the quantities of the glass finds at the Crusader-Period rural sites are too small to allow similar comparisons between sites. However, it is worth noting that we found luxury items like enameled and gilded glass vessels in the rural site of Horvat Uza, like the site that we see here, and also at other sites. So, to sum up, we would like to shortly present goals for future research of the ceramic and glass finds dated to the Crusader period. These goals include to raise new research questions as production, distribution, and consumption, as well as trade, acculturation, and various social issues. We would like to study the ceramic and glass finds in a wider context. For instance, and here are just two examples, food and food waste. If we place the finds into a context of food consumption, as this was the main role our vessels played. Reconstruction of the diet and feasting habits in the Latin Kingdom of Jerusalem by collecting remains of foodstuffs and implying archaeobotanical studies, residue analysis, etc. Another point could be art historical research, and looking at our finds from this perspective can help to answer such questions as how do these finds fit into the contemporary visual language? Can they contribute to the study of transculturation and acculturation in this interesting period of the meeting between the worlds of Islam, Byzantium, and the Latin world? Another goal is publication of new excavated materials, like from new excavations at Montfort and Belvoir, and the future one at Atlit, and others, to enlarge the known corpus. In every excavation, we always find something new that we didn't see before. Of course, we would like to do additional archaeometrical analysis, especially on the glass finds, as we said before, to answer questions of production, distribution, consumption. And of course, this in turn can shed light on larger questions regarding trade and social issues during this intriguing period. And our last goal is to train a younger generation of researchers interested in the study of Crusader period material cultural remains in Israel. Thank you very much for your attention, and we would like to thank our colleagues for their collaboration. Without sharing their finds, we would not be able to do this research. Thank you.